Hamburger coaster video tutorial. It's in two pieces, above and below. Below it is a flat. The top piece is to first make it the same as the bottom. After poking flat, then add a little wool on top. Poke the drum a little bit on it. Then take the white and black wool. Poke out the sesame seeds on the bread. It's two pieces. Let's take a look at one of its dimensions. The two sizes are the same. It's about 9 centimeters, 9 to 10 centimeters in diameter. It's a perfect circle, about 9 to 10 cm. Its thickness is about 1 to 1.5 centimeters. About 1.2 centimeters. That's the actual thickness of the burger. We are a foam table. There are 3 poking needles inserted next to the foam table. We need paper towels. Wipe the anti-rust oil off the needle, and then we prick them. For burgers, you need to use these 5 colors. Finally, on the surface of the hamburger, you can take a little cheese for this yellow one. Just spread a small amount on it. Let's take this beige one first. Lay it out little by little. Pull it off bit by bit. Note that the size of one shop should exceed 9 centimeters in diameter. The size of a circle. Because of wool, we poke smaller and smaller. So it was fluffy at first. The scope of your shop should exceed our actual size. You can also take a little brown and red. The same dress shoes. Or take a little bit of this very light yellow. Go to the upper bunk a little. And then poke it when you're done. The back also needs to be spread up. The wool is then placed on a foam table. Take the needle and stab. Easier when poking wool. Just place the needle vertically and pull it out vertically. But in the process of jabbing, time will be longer then. We should be patient when poking. The jab time of a single needle will be longer. We can take 2 needles and merge them together. Hold it together. Let's stab together. For burgers, we have to stab both the front and back. If you poke in person, be diligent and faster. Until all the wool felted together. It's the same on the top, and it's the same on the bottom. The colors used and the methods of poking are the same. That's after we poked it flat on this one. The top piece is a little bulging. Stack him some more wool in this position. That's it. We can, if it is not poked out, the burnt look of the burger. We can also add a little more brown to this. After both sides are almost poked, and then we took the wool off the edges. Be careful to fix the shape while folding and poking. When you fold in, maybe the edges will be particularly thick. We can feel its thickness with our hands. If the edges are particularly thick, we need to be thin in the middle, plus some wool. Make the bottom of the entire coaster the same thickness. In this case, it is not easy to tilt the cup or tip over. So our coaster must be even. The thickness should be uniform. We're going to give it a fine poke now. Poke the big pores down. Be patient when poking. Give it to him little by little. Poke evenly. If you want the edges of the bread to turn a little yellow, we can also take the yellow in our material pack. Go to shop on my side. It's not in the video. So it's useless. Because of the bread, its face. If the roast is a little tender, it will be yellowish. So this can be random. We can take the yellow wool of this cheese. Go and lay it lightly. Note that you only need a little bit. Just gently pull some like this. Don't need a lot. We are now the wool that folded us up. And our fixed wool. Poke it tighter little by little. Note that the thickness should be unified when poking. Overall thickness. So our overall thickness. It can also be at 1.2 centimeters. The edge should be poked flat. Continue to poke the position of the edge neatly. If you want to make the position of the edge of the bread, we can lay a layer of white wool on the side. Be careful to talk a little less. Bunk it up, then use it again. Poke the needle for him to poke. Use double needles to speed up. In this case, one of our bottoms is completed. Then put the bread on top of the bottom. Put the vegetables and put what we need. And we'll see. I still take this one, because our bottom is the bottom of bread. It is the same as the above piece. You just drum it up a little bit. Then poke out the one tallest from the top middle. Lower on the side in the shape of a loaf of bread. Do the same thing in beige and brown. Brown and yellow pile up. Pile it up a little bit. Stack up. Stack the drums a little bit in the middle. And then you put it on a foam table. Let the middle position bulge up. Then above, and some light colors on the side. After applying, if we want him to be yellow, we can put some more yellow on the side. Then poke it tight. After poking tightly, we go on top. Poked with white and black sesame seeds. White and black sesame seeds are required. A little smaller. The position of the edge should be the same. Poke it flat and tight. That way we can finish poking. After poking, if there is more floating hair on the side, cut off some of the floating hair. In this case, it looks more delicate. And then this one of our bread bottoms. And this one above this one is done. In this case, we can put it inside. Put on the coasters we want. And we're done with the burger coasters. A video of beef. Check the size first. It's about 9 to 10 centimeters in diameter. Then the thickness is 5 to 7 millimeters. We'll start with the brown wool. Again, we're going to rip it off and lay it flat. Notice one of its thicknesses. We can pull less wool when laying. And we laid it out. You can feel its thickness with your hands. Then we take out the foam table. A wool we laid. On a foam table. It must be larger than 10 centimeters. So it gets tighter. If the size is less than 10 centimeters, will be smaller. Will be less than 9 to 10 centimeters. Then we go and poke the paved wool firmly. We use a poke needle. We need a tissue to wipe off first. We can use two needles merged together to prick. It will be faster this way. Coaster words. Turn it over and be diligent. If you don't turn it over diligently enough. Let's fix it together first. After being fixed together. Hedge fixing. If the shape is not particularly round, it is also possible. If it can be round, try to be a little rounder. This is a beef in fixed shape. After fixing, we can feel the edges with our hands. If it is thicker, if the middle is thinner, let's lay a little in the middle. Let this thickness become more uniform to prevent unevenness, and then the cup is unstable. So you need to put a thickness of the whole. Try to poke as thick as possible. After applying, we'll then use a poking needle to poke the wool on top tightly. Then, while poking tightly, our wool will have a little red and yellow on it. Next, we're going to take out a small amount of red. Be careful to spread it thinner on our beef slices. Let's stab together. You can poke some on the front and back to shop some. It must be thinner. Just spread a few wool on it. If you accidentally lay it, the color is too bright. We can also take a little more brown wool. Go and cover some up. A red one, a brightness of yellow. Then again, poke our piece of beef flat as a whole. Just tighten it. Note that the position of the edge should also be poked flat and tight. The thickness next to it should also be flat. Then feel with your hands whether the thickness is uniform. If it's even, we can go ahead and poke it. If it is uneven, ray spread wool on thin areas. Keep stabbing. The edges must be neatly positioned. If so, one of our beef burgers, it's basically done. It doesn't matter if the pores on it are larger, because of the surface itself is not particularly smooth. In this case, the edges are neatly positioned. It doesn't matter if the pores are larger. It's basically done. If the edges are a little hairy, we can use scissors. Trim off the floating hair on the edge. It looks more refined. Tomato. One of its dimensions. It's a circle, but the outline is not particularly round. Because of our tomato wheel, it's not a perfect circle. We can bump the edges a little bit. Take a look at the overall size. Can do 9 to 10 cm. This size is about 9.3 centimeters. And let's look at tomatoes. Then, compare the thickness and take a look. The thickness is about 8 millimeters. Less than a centimeter. Then because it is sliced, words at the bottom. The texture just needs to poke the other side. Let's take out the red wool first. Little by little, pull it off. Pile it together. Notice the size of the wool we pull out. It is larger than the size of our finished product because the more we poke. So one size of our tile. A little bigger. Including its thickness. We can feel the thickness with our hands. Pinch it tight. See if the thickness is enough. It's still fluffy when paved. Next we take out. Foam table words foam table. We put our finished wool on a foam table. Then take the poke needle to fix the wool first. In this way, the wool will not fall apart. It has anti-rust oil on the poke needle. First wipe off the oil on it with a tissue. And then we prick them. Because our coasters are front and back. So the bottom pad should also be given to him in turn. Poking flat, you need to turn it over more diligently when poking. If you poke too long in person, it might just stick to this foam table. It's easier to poke wool. Just take the poke needle and place the needle vertically and pull it out vertically. Just pull out the needle diagonally and diagonally. The wool is poked a little tighter. If you poke with a single needle, it will be slower. If there are multiple needles, you can use multiple needles to poke. If there are multiple needles, there will be 3 needles and 7 or 7 needles. To prick it this way will also speed up its opening. The current position between us. Basically, it's almost poked. A little tighter. Then next we're going to put this wool on the edge. Fold it in little by little. Folding edge fixing. While folding, we can pull the wool flat and fold it inside. In that case, what you need to pay attention to when folding it is, if the edges are thick, we still need to add a little bit in the middle. Well, because a coaster if the edge is thick. If the middle is too thin, the cup may be unstable, so try to poke him to the edge. It is the same thickness as the middle position. Now. And then we go ahead and poke. Make the shape of the entire edge a little neater. At the same time, you should also touch this thickness. Before we poke tightly, need to lay a layer on it. Make it a little thicker. You can feel one of its thicknesses. Because of the current thickness, it can't be measured. So feel it with your hands. Feel how thick it is. When the poke slowly starts to tighten, You can measure it with a ruler. Wool covered. It is also necessary to poke it flat little by little. The edge must be poked neatly. Then we have to poke both front and back. And we'll take a look at that. The edge of it is not particularly round, so we can poke a little dent. Location. Just concave it a little bit inside, because our whole tomatoes can't be perfectly round. So the sliced part is also a little bumpy. The location can be random. Just make the edges not too round. Be careful with your fingers when poking again. The position of the edges. We can trim it a little with scissors. Then the middle position. Let's go and poke him a rice character first. Take white wool. Poke him up. Pay attention to the position in the middle. First, fix it with a rough shape. Then go and poke it tight. After it's fixed, we're going to poke it tight now. Be careful not to place the needle deeply when poking. If you go deep, there will be white hair at the bottom. So when we place the needle, we need to place the needle under the surface. Insert shallower. Just a little shallower when we poke the needle. The edge must be poked neatly. Then this one will be whiter. Let's leave it alone. Put the edge first. This tomato, this paper position. Poke it in the arc. When poking again, we put it on by hand little by little, laying out an arc. Spread it into a shape with a little arc. The package of the package lives in this white location. After surrounding him, pull a small amount of white wool next to it. Be sure to be thinner and lay it on him. Then to spread a layer. After applying, then we take the yellow wool and put the seeds inside. Poke. For seeds, take a little bit of wool. Poke it into granules with your hands. You can poke 3 or 4 in one. Note that these are all needles under the surface. 3 or 4 are okay. A little less too. You can also see the size of the location. You can poke an extra one where the location is large. You can poke one less in a small place. Could be random. After poking, we took the red wool as a whole. Be careful to be thinner. Thinner. Throughout. Spread this layer of tomatoes. After laying, next we're going to poke it together as a whole, until all the wool is poked almost firm. You can do it later. Be patient when poking wool, because he will take longer to stab. So let's be patient when we poke. To poke it whole, poke delicate. You can put 2 needles together. In this case, the speed will be slightly faster. In this case, one of our coasters is complete. Tomato coaster. Poached eggs are white and yellow. Over all sides, the place where we measure the widest, because its outer outline is irregular. The widest place is about 10 centimeters. On the other side, it is about 8 to 9 centimeters. The outer contour is irregular. The whole thing is flat. It's a flat surface. Its thickness is in about 5 millimeters. Next, we take out white wool. Note that the white wool needs to be torn off. And they lay them tiled together. If you just pull the whole plane at the beginning, we can make it a little bigger because the edge has to be folded in to exceed the size of our hole. Then take our pulled wool, put it on our foam table to get the poke needle. Vertically lower the needle and pull it out vertically. Pull out the needle diagonally. Because it's a flat thing, we need to prick both front and back. Be careful not to go too deep when placing the needle. If it's too deep, the other side will be hairier. Let's take a look. Now my lower needle is deeper. You can see that a lot of hair will come out at the bottom. So we're just going to go a little deeper. After fixing the shape, you need an undersurface needle on both the front and back. If the needle is placed on the surface, it should be shallower under the needle. The way to poke the wool is relatively simple. Pull out the needle diagonally. Both front and back need to be stabbed. When our whole wool is tied together, we are going to slowly fold the edges in again. You don't need the exact same outer contour when folding. If it is a needle, it will be slower to poke. We can use two needles to merge together. Then take it in your hand and poke it together. This will speed up the speed of soiling a little bit. Because if a single needle of wool felt is poked, be patient when poking. And one of our thicknesses after fixing it, we need to feel its thickness with our hands. Is it around 5 millimeters? The thickness should also be uniform. If there is a thinner piece, we're going to put another layer of wool on top. Keep stabbing. After poking one side, poke the reverse side as well. Otherwise, our wool will be fastened to our foam table. Still, front and back. Then next we need to put the wool next to it, folded in little by little. Folding fixed shape. You can even out the edges first, and then fold it inside. In this case, it will not be fixed. Agglomeration. Pay attention to the size of our whole body. Fold it in first to fix the shape. Waiting for the wool on the edge to fold in after fixing. Let's go poking together again. Poke it flat. After it's all folded in, this is an edge line of our hole. Then the edge line is now more fluffy. We need to poke it tight like this. There will be a little problem after folding here. It's thicker on the side, thinner in the middle. We can move to the middle at this time. Pull off some more wool. Just a little bit. Make the middle a little thicker. Similar to next door. At the same time, we can. Also cover the position on the back a little bit. Single-sided is also okay. The back is not covered. Then we proceed. Fixing is the wool that we put on, poked with a needle. Let it hold. After fixing, we can feel its thickness a little bit. It's about the same as the edge. You can touch it with your hands, and then we prick again. Put its edge line, poke flat with the wool covering it. When poking the edge, we can use needles. Poke it from the side. In that case, the edges will become a little neater. You can also take scissors. If there is a lot of hair, you can also take scissors and trim it a little. It will look more delicate this way. Cut off the floating hair. Next, we're going to poke this yoke in the middle. Take out the yellow one. We'll gave it by hand. Fold it into a little circle. Then put it in the middle, the size of the egg yolk. You can choose according to the size of the mat you made. Adjust it. After putting it on, fix the egg yolk with a poke needle first. After fixing, we need to take a little white. Be careful to pull it thinner. Cover the upper layer at the edge. Let the edge of the egg yolk and the egg white have a white film. Same effect. After covering, we're going to hold it in place with a poke needle. When fixing, the surface needle is also required. Don't poke deep. You can use 1 needle or 2 needles. If the egg yolk is used, it only needs to be fixed on one side. On the other side, we don't need to fix it. Egg yolk. Fix the next one. A flat poached egg after poking. In that case, our poached eggs are done. It's a cute coaster. You can also poke a smiley face on it. Note that the needle must be placed under the surface. The bottom is hairy. Let's take a look at one of its dimensions. The width is about 10 to 11 centimeters. The other side, one of its widths is around 9 to 10 centimeters. You can poke it into a square. 10 times 10 is fine. This is one of 9 asterisk 9.5 times 10.5, a rectangle. The main colors used are brown and lemon yellow, because cheese butter will be thinner. So this thickness is thinner, about 5 millimeters or so. 2 colors of wool. We combine 2 colors of wool, then tear it off little by little. Note that it is slightly flaky when pulling. Spread it on our table first. Lay it out in a big flat surface. Go and lay it up layer by layer. Press it with your hand. In this case, if it is laid out, it will be flat and neat. If the whole paragraph is wrong, it may not be so uniform in color. So we need to shop bit by bit. You can press it a little when laying. See if there is a place that is particularly thin. If it is particularly thin, make it as uniform as possible. This thickness, it must be thicker than one of our entire coasters. 1 by 1 thickness. And its size, it should also be larger than one size of our coaster, because we need to put one of the 4 sides at that time. The excess should be folded inside. Now I think we are like this. Thickness, heel width. The size is bigger than our coaster. And we put it on our foam table. There will be 3 poking needles on the foam table. We need paper towels. And then we're going to poke with a needle. Notice our one-sided stuff. It will be slower to poke with a single needle. It may take a little longer. Now, we fixed the middle position. It 1T spread out. So how do we get this one of ours? The speed gets faster. Point if there are no more stitches. We can take 2 or 3 needles. 2 are almost there. Merge 2 or 3 needles together. Then hold it together and poke it. In this case, the bonding time will be shortened. And then we have a flat thing. So we're going to poke both front and back. If you poke one side, if you don't poke the other side, this will stick tightly to the foam table. So we need to sprint front and back. Then we poke in the middle, and it's almost flat. Let's feel it with our hands. This time, we need to add some wool on top. Spread a little. Make it more average with other places. It's more even. Let's take a look. One of his front and back. It's almost poked flat. Here we go. We need to fold the wool on the side in. Be careful to even out the wool on the sides first, and then it's hemmed with a thick stitch. When poking, one more thing to note is that, because our stuff is thinner, don't place the needle very deep. There will be a lot of hair brought out under the bottom. If you poke it under, the wool will come out just one by one. Would be more complicated, there will be more hair. So when we poke, we must needle below the surface. Fold him in first. When folding, you can fix its edge shape first, after it is fully fixed. Now, we've basically got the edges fixed. But it didn't poke tightly. The overall shape has not yet come out. So, we now need to go and slowly flatten the edge. Flat and compact. When poking it flat and tight again, we need to go. At the same time, you need to give it a thinner place to make up. Lay a layer. Patching adjusts a shape of the edge. When poking, we pressed it on the felt. Put this hand farther away. Avoid poking your hands. The edges must be neat. Let's take a look now. One of our basic shapes has come out. And then poke it with these wool in the middle. When poking, it is the same as the needle under the surface. Poke both front and back. The position of the edges. We can also trim it a little with scissors. Jumping floating hair. You can also poke the floating hair in little by little. If so, one of our coasters. The middle position has been poked. Then we need to remove the floating hair on the edge. Use scissors to trim it off little by little. If you have a small electric iron at home, you can also give it a little bit to the edge. Go iron, it will be more flat. In this case, one of our coasters is complete. Three greens were used. Let's mix the 3 greens a little bit first. When mixing, we are just going to put the 3 together. You're tearing it off bit by bit, then spread it on the table. Spread it out. Little by little, you're going to rip it off. Note that it should be a little bigger when laying. Because of the position of the edge, we need to fold it open, folding up or folding down. Let's take a look at this rough size first. About 10 to 11 centimeters. This is the widest position because its edges are irregular. So we measure the widest position. The other width is about 9 to 10 centimeters. The position of the edges is irregular. This size is based on the widest distance. Quantitative. So when we are there, we need to first rip each color off and spread it together. Then we take out the foam table. Put it on the foam table. Use a poke needle to fix the wool together first. Fix it with a poke needle. Go jab it. It will stick together because our coasters are flat, so you have to poke both the front and back. It won't fall apart when it's fixed. If it doesn't spread out, we'll keep poking it. A needle. It may stab slowly. We can join the 2 needles together. This will speed up its felting speed. For wool needles, the way to thorn them is relatively simple. Just place the needle vertically and pull it out vertically. Just pull out the needle diagonally, otherwise it is easy to break the needle. We need subsurface needles when we poke. Don't poke deep. I'm poking deep now. There will be some fluffy ones below, and they will be brought out. Position where the hand can be buckled. Leave less pins in the buckle position. In this way, the depth of each needle is the same. If you hold it very high, then each needle will be poked deeper. If you poke deeper, theirs will coming out at the bottom. Now we just keep poking it. Poking our wool tighter and tighter. Poke it first, and then we'll poke underneath. You can't keep poking on it. in that case. So when we poke, keep lifting this felt in our hands. And then after we're done poking above, we turn the bottom over and reverse it. Poke it on the back too. One thing to keep in mind is that our thickness, you need to touch it with your hands. Look at the hole. Is the thickness of a plane the same? If there is a particularly small piece, it needs to be covered with wool. Now ours is. The reverse side is basically fixed. Then we need to put this one next to it. Folding the wool in little by little. You can also fold it up. You can also fold it down. Pay attention, but flatten it a little bit. It's not easy to agglomerate like this, because we are vegetables. So there it is, along the edges. Irregular. The position of the edges is not fixed shape. Just fold it inside. Just keep it in one size. In that case, we folded the whole edge in. After folding in, let's touch one of its thicknesses again. The one next to it will be a little thicker. This time, we need to add a little wool at the bottom. Makes the whole coaster flattering. Otherwise, the edges will be thicker. It's thinner inside. In this case, the cup may be unstable, so we need a little less inside. A little bit of wool. Just make its thickness more uniform. When we're done, we continue to poke. Poke all the wool firmly. Just level it out. It is important to note that the edges should be neat. The thickness should be uniform. There is also a lower needle. Needles under the surface. Don't place the needle very deep. And it needs to be spiny on both front and back. Just until it feels. The position of the edge should also be poked flat for him. Let's take a look after poking. If it will be hairy on the side, we can take scissors and trim the edges a little bit. If you want to make it flattering, you can. If there is a splint or a small electric iron at home, you can also iron it a little bit. Driving too high. 180 to 200 degrees is fine. If you open it too high, you may burn the wool off. It is also possible to trim it. Put the bit of the edge. If so, one of our pieces, and it's done. Then put it under our cup. Can be combined into a hamburger. The beef burger can make 6 coasters, and the cheese includes 4 coasters.